Your name isn't on the guest list." The words struck harder than I'd anticipated, especially given their casual delivery. The event coordinator barely glanced my way, clipboard held between us like a barrier. Beyond her, the shimmering ballroom of the majestic Grand buzzed with crystal clinks, cheerful chatter, and the smooth strains of a jazz ensemble near the platform. I paused. "Could you recheck, Miss Aurora Vance? I'm from the Strategic Operations Division." Her lips tightened, a practiced, almost pitying curve. "Apologies, this is an exclusive event for senior executives and awardees only." I didn't react immediately. I just stood there on the sidewalk, my heels sinking slightly into the freshly laid red carpet leading to the entrance. The frigid January air bit at my skin, but the ache in my core was far more acute. Behind me, arriving guests flowed past, their laughter and conversations drifting, effortlessly welcomed inside. Then, the voice I'd grown to despise. "Oh, wow, you actually made an appearance." I turned. It was Brooke Hayes, a junior colleague, an intern who'd inexplicably been promoted after presenting my year-long project as her own. She wore a midnight blue, floor-length gown with the confidence of a rare perfume. Beside her, her companion smirked, appraising me like I was a misplaced caterer. "Who invites nobodies to these things?" She chuckled, sweeping past me and vanishing into the warmth and glow. I could have departed right then. Most people would have. But I lingered a moment longer, letting the bleak reality settle over me like hoarfrost on a window pane. 6 years. Half a dozen years of working late, meeting deadlines no one else could touch. Rectifying broken systems. Crafting models they couldn't grasp. And yet, here I was, exiled outside, while those who had trampled on my efforts were being lauded within. As a Scorpio, ruled by ambition and a deep sense of justice, this exclusion ignited a cold fury within me. Then I felt a tremor in my coat pocket. My smartphone. The display lit up with a single word. "Ready?" It was the confirmation I'd been anticipating. I didn't hesitate. I hit send and turned away. Before I recount what that message unleashed, before the deluge of calls, the ensuing chaos, the ultimate fallout, I urge you to pause. Have you ever been cast out from something you helped forge? Watched from the cold while others sipped the wine you purchased, wore the attire you prepared, delivered the speech you penned? If you've ever felt invisible, undervalued, or been branded a nobody by individuals who ascended solely because of your contributions, then this narrative is for you. Because what transpired next redefined everything. My name is Aurora Vance. Until that night, I was a lead strategic analyst at Titan Flow Solutions, a rapidly expanding force in the logistics sector, as the trade journals like to label it. For the majority of my career, I truly believed that sheer diligence was sufficient. My background wasn't flashy. I hadn't attended an Ivy League university. I wasn't kin to a board member. I didn't schmooze with executives during Friday happy hours. I simply consistently delivered. I had engineered a simulation model that slashed the company's Q3 expenditures by $2. $6 million. I caught a critical forecasting error that would have jeopardized a 7-figure client contract. I developed the real-time optimization algorithm that, ironically, was being celebrated at that very banquet. But none of that mattered the day Wallace Thorne assumed his role as our new vice president. Wallace was the kind of leader who wielded charm like a honed blade. Smooth in public forums, razor-sharp behind closed doors. He'd laud concepts openly, then dissect you in private one-on-one sessions. And somehow, Brooke, the former intern, was perpetually hovering nearby. She started attending meetings she wasn't invited to, echoing phrases I'd used in private Slack channels, quoting figures only I had meticulously analyzed. Initially, I dismissed it as mere coincidence. Then came the board assembly in October. I wasn't invited, but Brooke presented my framework verbatim, my charts, my metrics, even my specific color scheme. And Wallace beamed with paternalistic pride as if she were his protege. I remained silent that day. But after that, I ceased sharing, stopped trusting, and commenced formulating a strategy. Over the subsequent few months, as they reveled in triumphs built upon my work, I began constructing something else. A contingency plan, a new trajectory. I meticulously documented every digital file, every version history, every Slack conversation, time-stamped, archived, and secured on an encrypted drive, wholly disconnected from any company network. I discreetly reached out to former colleagues, individuals who had left the company, some pushed out, some completely burnt out. People like Leo Maxwell from Data Operations, who had engineered the forecasting module before Brooke even joined, or Sophia Chen from Client Strategy, who was mysteriously laid off after securing our largest contract of the fiscal year. What we unearthed was a pattern, a systemic culture of exploitation masquerading as meritocracy. And so, we began crafting something of our own, something superior. That night, as I departed the gala, the snow crunching under my heels, I felt nothing but a profound sense of calm. I had transmitted the message, not to my direct manager, not to HR, but to the legal counsel, the media relations contact, and most critically, to our top 5 clients, each of whom had expressed escalating dissatisfaction with Titan Flow's recent direction. Attached were irrefutable proofs of intellectual theft, of operational mismanagement, of blatant falsehoods, accompanied by a straightforward proposition. The next 30 minutes would alter everything. But I didn't linger. I simply kept walking. I hadn't even reached the subway station before the calls began. 1, 2, 5, 11, 38. The screen glowed with names I knew all too well. Wallace, HR, the Chief Operating Officer, even Brooke. I didn't answer a single one, not because I didn't want to engage, but because I already knew precisely what they would articulate. I'd heard it all before. It's just business. You're a team player, correct? This isn't personal. But this time, it was profoundly personal. They hadn't merely stolen my intellectual contributions. They had stripped away my voice, my professional integrity. And when they denied me entry to that gala, they committed one final, fatal error. They gravely underestimated a Scorpio's resolve. When I returned to my apartment that night, I didn't celebrate. I changed into comfortable sweatpants, tied back my hair, and opened my laptop. It was time to corroborate my suspicions. The documents had been accessed, downloaded, forwarded, screenshots taken. The metadata revealed everything. I logged into our secure workspace hours, not theirs, and saw the green indicator flash. Connected, Leo, Sophia, Chloe. We were live. Status? I typed. Sophia replied first. PR and CFO forwarded the client memo at 8:11 p.m. Legal reviewed the report at 8:17. Wallace opened the contract audit log. Leo chimed in next. Harborline Logistics, one of the key clients, requested a meeting tomorrow morning. They reviewed your offer. Looks like they're ready to discuss. I gazed at the screen, my heart thrumming, not from apprehension, but from exhilarating clarity. Every action we took was entirely within legal bounds. Every document referenced publicly available performance metrics, internal reports I had legitimate access to, and client-facing data I had personally engineered. Most importantly, every innovation they were parading around had my digital fingerprint in its file history. Let me be explicit. I harbored no desire to ruin anyone. I didn't seek vengeance for its own sake. What I craved was straightforward acknowledgement, fairness, a rightful place at the table I had helped construct. But when every portal slammed shut, I comprehended that I didn't require their table. I could forge my own. It had commenced 6 months prior. Titan Flow had initiated a structural shift, or so they claimed. Realigning, Wallace termed it. New faces appeared in high-level discussions. Titles shifted without rationale. Individuals were promoted sans performance reviews. Some teams experienced layoffs. Others, like ours, witnessed sudden expansion, just not for the individuals who had genuinely earned it. The warning signals were ubiquitous. Sophia had been managing our international client portfolio for 3 years when she was abruptly removed from a crucial deal and replaced by someone with a more ostentatious LinkedIn profile. She voiced her objections. 2 weeks later, her position was eliminated. Leo, the data operations lead, had constructed the very system we all relied upon for logistics efficiency. After requesting budget for essential upgrades, he was suddenly demoted and reassigned. No explanation, no justification. The message was unmistakable. Loyalty is inconsequential. Politics dictate everything. I began archiving everything. Not furtively, but silently. Quietly, meticulously. I stored version histories, email receipts, meeting logs. I meticulously tracked deliverables and who claimed credit for presenting them. And when Brooke, the intern, started appearing in meetings, citing slides I hadn't shared with her, I added precise timestamps to every component I developed. I never accused her, never confronted her. I simply prepared. 3 months ago, I approached Sophia and Leo, not with accusations, but with a fundamental question. If you could establish a company from the ground up, how would you approach it differently? We conversed for hours, then for weeks. Then we started sketching. We weren't naive. We weren't plotting to erect a billion-dollar empire overnight, but we believed in a simple premise: a company that didn't foster exploitation. A company where tangible impact superseded arbitrary titles, where genuine talent wasn't stifled by middle managers fixated on superficial appearances. We built the foundational framework. Then we filed for an LLC under a name that resonated deeply with all of us. ZenithLink, symbolizing the connection and growth we sought to build, much like a phoenix rising from corporate ashes. Back in my apartment, the messages continued to flood in. Wallace, Aurora, call me immediately. This is not how professionals conduct themselves. Brooke, I didn't know the full scope. Can we talk, please? HR, this matter has escalated. We'd like to extend an invitation for a formal discussion. I closed my laptop. It was too late for hollow apologies, too late for thinly veiled threats disguised as diplomacy. They had dismissed me as a nobody. They had laughed, toasted inside, while I shivered in the cold. And now they were afraid. The following morning, we convened with Harborline Logistics via a private video conference. I presented our alternative system, more transparent, more efficient, more adaptable than anything Titanflow currently offered. They didn't hesitate. We've been anticipating someone to build precisely this, the VP stated. Forward the documentation. By noon, we had secured our first official client. By 6 p.m., I was officially no longer employed at Titanflow. They didn't terminate me. I resigned, submitting my letter in silence. No grand speech, no fanfare. I simply clicked send and felt utterly liberated. By the time I awoke the next morning, my inbox displayed 112 unread messages. 3 were from the CEO himself, 16 from legal, just one from Brooke. The subject line read, "I think we made a mistake." She didn't comprehend the half of it. I didn't respond. Instead, I logged into ZenithLink's dashboard. Overnight, the Harborline Logistics deal had triggered a remarkable ripple effect. A second prospective client, Summitport Corp., reached out after someone in their procurement department viewed our presentation slides, likely forwarded by a disaffected contact internally. They wanted a meeting. That afternoon, I met with Leo and Sophia in the co-working space we were leasing by the hour. There was nothing glamorous about it, just 3 basic desks, a coffee machine that sputtered more than it brewed, and a cracked window pane that emitted a mournful whistle when the wind picked up. But it was ours. Leo had barely slept. He looked utterly exhausted but radiating energy, like a person who just realized the door to their cage was wide open. "I've refined the optimization module based on their latest performance reports," he stated, spinning his laptop around to reveal the live dashboard. Sophia leaned over his shoulder. "If this functions as effectively as we anticipate, it could reduce Summitport's holding costs by 19% in Cone alone." My heart thumped in my chest. Let's ensure they grasp that clearly. We spent the next 4 hours refining our pitch. It wasn't merely about numerical figures. It was about irrefutable credibility. Summitport was a $700 million enterprise. If they partnered with us, there would be no looking back. Meanwhile, at Titanflow, a quiet panic was seeping through the corporate facade. Former colleagues began contacting me on private accounts. Some offered congratulations, others discreetly fished for insights. One direct message stood out. "Aurora, legal just pulled all our internal Slack archives. Everyone's on edge. Wallace is cooped up in meetings with compliance. They suspect more people are planning to leave. Are they correct?" I didn't reply, but yes, they were. 2 more employees had already consented to join ZenithLink if our initial funding round materialized. Chloe Davis from Partnerships and Ethan Green from Enterprise Sales. Both had been repeatedly marginalized or ignored to the point where they barely required persuasion. We weren't just forging a company. We were constructing a sanctuary, a place where genuine talent, often dismissed as just an analyst or just support, could thrive. The Summitport meeting was slated for 2 p.m. They logged in from a sleek, glass-walled conference room. We logged in from a space with a flickering overhead light and a whiteboard still stained from someone else's prior brainstorming session. But we were prepared. I shared my screen and meticulously guided them through our entire framework. How we'd re-engineer their supplier prioritization model, leverage real-time data analytics to predict logistical bottlenecks, and furnish executive-level dashboards that were genuinely intuitive. When I concluded, a silence hung in the air for 5 full seconds. Then came the query, "Why isn't your system already widely available?" Sophia responded, her voice composed and direct. Because until now, the individuals who conceived and built it were not the ones permitted to launch it. By 4 p.m., we had a verbal commitment. At 5:37 p.m., Wallace called again. This time, he left a voicemail. "Aurora, we urgently need to converse. Look, I acknowledge things weren't handled flawlessly, but operating behind the company's back, soliciting clients, that's career suicide. We can still rectify this if you come in tomorrow. There's a newly created position we've been deliberating, Vice President of Strategy. We can even discuss equity." He still fundamentally misunderstood. He believed this entire endeavor was about a mere job title, not the profound injustice that fuels a Scorpio's drive for transformation. At 6:02 p.m., I received an email marked urgent. It was from Titanflow's legal counsel. The subject line, "Cease and desist, unauthorized use of confidential materials." They asserted I had violated confidentiality clauses by misappropriating intellectual property. They cited client rosters, pitch presentations, and optimization models. But what they failed to grasp, or perhaps refused to concede, was that every asset I had utilized was created on my personal devices, during my own time, well outside the purview of my employment agreement. And I possessed irrefutable proof, meticulous logs, precise timestamps, credible witnesses, archived Slack threads. I dispatched a single reply, "Kindly refer to Clause 9. 4 in my signed agreement concerning independent developments. All materials presented to third parties were generated without company resources or access to proprietary files. Your team's prior written acknowledgement of this was formally filed on July 3, 8:12 a.m., confirmed by IP audit logs. I am happy to furnish additional documentation if deemed necessary." I never received another communication from their legal department. That night, I sat in bed, a takeout container balanced on one knee, my laptop on the other. On the screen was a spreadsheet labeled Pipeline Phase 2. 4 companies were listed, all of them former Titanflow clients. All had recently encountered issues: sluggish implementation, deficient communication, technological stagnation. And all of them had previously reached out to me directly with inquiries before Wallace had instructed that they be rerouted to someone more senior. Now, they were circling back, not driven by resentment or corporate drama, but by a genuine need for solutions, real solutions. At 11:48 p.m., I received one final message from an unrecognized number. "They're losing it. Brooke's crying. Wallace's office light has been on for hours. You've sent shockwaves through the entire establishment." No name, no signature, just an anonymous observer witnessing the unraveling from within. I gazed at it for a moment, then locked my phone and closed my laptop. Tomorrow, we would meet with our third potential client, and this time, we wouldn't be paying by the hour. 2 weeks after I stood outside that corporate gala in the biting cold, we secured our third client. We signed the contract inside our very first genuine office space, a renovated third-floor walk-up above a defunct tailor shop downtown. The floorboards creaked, the windows stuck, the heating was temperamental. But I didn't care. It was ours. The contract was with Apex Bridge Transport, one of TitanFlow's most lucrative mid-tier accounts. They had discreetly contacted Leo after reading about our deal with Summitport Corp. The email simply stated, "We've been concerned with declining service levels. We'd like to explore alternatives." It was just one sentence, but I had read it 5 times. Apex Bridge shifting their business, that was the inaugural sign TitanFlow had a truly grave predicament. And still, they failed to comprehend the magnitude of what was unfolding. On the 3rd Friday of that month, the story broke. We had just concluded a late-night strategy session. Leo was ordering pizza. Sophia was reviewing implementation timelines when my phone screen illuminated. Breaking: internal shakeup at TitanFlow Solutions amid client defections and former employee startup buzz. The headline hit Tech Today, then spread like wildfire. Within the hour, 4 other major outlets picked it up. Our inbox was deluged with interview requests. LinkedIn exploded. Even a podcast host I'd never encountered messaged me, soliciting a guest slot. I didn't post a single thing. Not a statement, not a tweet. We didn't have to. The following morning, I received an email from Victoria Stone, a senior associate at Pinnacle Ventures. She had seen the press, vetted our background, and wished to schedule a call. We met on Monday via Zoom. She was incisive, succinct, and wasted no time. "I recognize early-stage funding isn't your primary focus yet," she stated, "but if you're serious about expansion, we'd like to participate. Your market fit is exceptionally robust for this stage, and the founding narrative, let's just say it profoundly resonates." She wasn't mistaken. I told her we would consider it. The truth was, we had been bootstrapping, drawing from personal savings, modest side consulting engagements, and small monthly retainers from our initial clients. But significant funding would transform the game. The question was whether it would transform us as well. Meanwhile, TitanFlow was in full damage control mode. One of my former colleagues, Chloe, forwarded a company-wide email she had received. It was from Wallace. Subject: Navigating change with strength. We've encountered some recent transitions that have spurred external conjecture. Please recall, we remain dedicated to our core values of innovation, collaboration, and excellence. No single individual dictates our collective success. Translation: Panic thinly disguised as executive command. But behind the carefully crafted corporate curtain, the numbers painted a starkly different picture. 4 major clients had departed. 2 large enterprise deals were now indefinitely on hold. Half a dozen key personnel had either resigned or gone silent, likely finalizing their departures. Their stock had plummeted 11% in 10 days. Then came the meeting with Pinnacle Ventures. Victoria and 2 senior partners extended an offer for an $1. $6 million seed round on an impeccably clean term sheet. No predatory clauses, no convoluted equity traps. I should have been ecstatic, but I remained cautious. We dedicated the weekend to scrutinizing the offer, every minute detail, every clause. I had witnessed too many promising companies gain initial traction only to be consumed by the very same corporate machinations they had sought to escape. That would not happen here. Sophia articulated it best. We didn't abandon one malfunctioning machine just to construct another. We negotiated for founder-controlled governance, non-dilutive grants for our initial hires, a commitment to inclusive hiring practices formally codified in our operating agreement. They consented. We signed the term sheet Monday morning. ZenithLink officially had secured funding. And for the very first time in my professional life, I wasn't dependent on anyone's permission to lead. This freedom, a hallmark of the independent Scorpio spirit, felt exhilarating. Later that week, Wallace issued a public statement, not a press release but a video. It was 2 minutes and 44 seconds long. Slick lighting, company banners behind him, a meticulously crafted script. "Innovation is a collective journey," he intoned. "We acknowledge all contributors, both past and present. We extend our best wishes to our former employees in their new endeavors, but rest assured, Titanflow's foundation remains robust." The smile at the conclusion was utterly hollow. What truly captivated my attention, however, was the subtle tremor in his left hand, the slight tremble, the strained composure. He knew the ground beneath him was shifting. He simply hadn't grasped how rapidly. That same evening, Chloe called me. "I'm done," she declared. "I simply cannot remain there any longer. It's akin to observing a skyscraper collapse in slow motion. Nobody trusts anyone. Half the team is pretending nothing is amiss, and the other half is updating their resumes during lunch breaks." I didn't pressure her. I didn't extend a job offer. But 3 days later, she messaged me, "If you have room for someone who still believes in building something authentic, I'm in." We onboarded Chloe as our client success lead the following Monday. Her immediate priority: finalizing the onboarding process for Everest Edge Cargo, our fourth and largest client to date. They approached us without any prior solicitation. "Titanflow consistently overpromised and underdelivered," their CTO remarked. "You already appear to be delivering before we've even formally signed." That wasn't an exaggeration. Leo had sent them a prototype dashboard as a sample. They showcased it to their board. That very night, they contacted us. What we were building was demonstrably effective, not because it was ostentatious or flashy, but because it was founded on credibility, clarity, and the singular element Titanflow had utterly forgotten: trust. And while they frantically attempted to salvage their tarnished image, we were merely embarking on our journey. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I spotted the email. Subject line: "Confidential meeting request from Titanflow Executive Board." Initially, I assumed it was a prank. The sender's address was legitimate, no deceptive spoofing. The message was concise and direct. "Miss Vance, on behalf of Titanflow's executive leadership, we formally request a private meeting to discuss potential avenues for collaboration or resolution. Sincerely, Frederick Sterling, Chairman of the Board." Frederick Sterling, the man whose name had previously existed only on official letterheads and press releases, the enigmatic power behind the corporate curtain. Now he desired a meeting with me. I reread the message thrice. Then I forwarded it to Sophia and Leo. Sophia's response arrived first. "You understand what this truly is, don't you? This isn't a dialogue. It's a damage control strategy." Leo's reply was more succinct. "If they're panicking, we're unequivocally doing something right." The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning at a neutral downtown law office. I didn't go unaccompanied. Our legal counsel accompanied me, and I brought printed documentation, just as a precaution. The conference room was starkly utilitarian. Glass walls, chilled bottled water, a large display screen no one bothered to use. Frederick Sterling was already seated upon my arrival. Impeccable suit, gleaming silver cufflinks, a perfectly composed countenance. Wallace sat beside him, wearing the same peculiar, almost forced smile I recalled from my performance reviews. And next to him, surprisingly, was Brooke. She didn't exude smugness this time. She looked utterly drained. "Thank you for coming, Miss Vance," Sterling began. I gave a brief nod. "Let's keep this efficient." Wallace spoke first, attempting to soften the atmosphere. "We acknowledge that errors were made, misunderstandings occurred, breakdowns in communication." "You mean the part where I was denied entry to the gala celebrating the very work I created?" I interjected evenly. He faltered. "We aspire to move forward constructively." Sterling interceded. "Miss Vance, we are prepared to extend a serious proposition. Titanflow wishes to acquire ZenithLink, encompassing its intellectual property and client relationships. In return, we are offering a substantial seven-figure payout, equity, and a senior leadership position, Chief Innovation Officer. I didn't answer immediately. I glanced at Brooke. Her eyes flickered downwards. She couldn't meet my gaze. I turned back to Sterling. You wish to acquire the company you actively tried to discredit. The very same company your legal team threatened just 2 weeks ago. The identical company that exists because you profoundly undervalued the individuals who were foundational to your success. Sterling didn't flinch. Business evolves. You are undeniably a gifted leader, but competing against Titanflow is an arduous uphill battle. We possess immense scale, abundant resources, extensive reach. And you also possess a significant PR crisis, I stated. 4 major clients have defected, a public stock dip, and a rapidly escalating narrative that your corporation rewards the wrong people. Wallace shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sterling's voice hardened slightly. We have no intention of allowing this situation to persist indefinitely. Should you decline this offer, we will pursue all available measures: competitive blockades, legal avenues, strategic buyouts of key personnel. Our attorney leaned forward, none of which will withstand scrutiny, given our robust IP filings and non-compete exemptions under state law. Sterling looked at me again. Aurora, you've built something impressive, but you are still comparatively small. We are extending you an opportunity to integrate it into something far larger. Secure your legacy and disengage from this struggle. I surveyed the room, the polished table, the sterile walls, the faces of the people who had once told me I wasn't worthy of a seat. Then I reached into my folder and extracted a single page, a graph depicting client growth by week. ZenithLink's line ascended sharply. Titanflow's declined, client by client. I already am something bigger, I stated quietly, a true Scorpio knowing her own power. I'm not here to secure my legacy, I'm building it. Sterling looked at Wallace. Wallace looked at Brooke. She finally spoke. I didn't realize how much of it was truly yours. I only acted on what I was given. I'm sorry. I gave her a slow nod. I believe you, Brooke, but the damage was irreversible. Sterling stood. Very well, we shall consider this conversation concluded. I rose as well. No, Mr. Sterling, you will consider it concluded. I'm just getting started. When we exited that building, the sun was sharp and clear. It was still cold, but I no longer felt it. By the time we returned to the office, our inbox held a new message. Client inquiry. Everest Edge Cargo. Their contract with Titanflow was nearing renewal. They desired a call. Leo looked at me. Should we accept? I smiled. Let's make room. That night, we remained late in the office, not to catch up, but to prepare. Because the next phase wasn't merely growth. It was scaling, establishing robust systems, hiring full-time staff, planning international expansion. They had offered me a title. I had chosen a mission. And the ripple was rapidly evolving into a formidable wave. 1 year to the day after I stood outside that gala, the biting snow soaking through my dress shoes, I stepped onto a brightly lit stage. This time, I was an invited dignitary. It was the annual Logistics and Innovation Conference, the most significant industry event of the year. My name was prominently printed on the program as the keynote speaker, and the room was packed. Executives, investors, founders, analysts, and yes, even a few familiar faces from Titanflow. Funny how fate comes full circle. I stood at the podium and surveyed the hundreds of faces before me. Some wore smiles, some skepticism, some simply awaited a compelling narrative, so I offered them one. Precisely 1 year ago today, I began, I was informed I wasn't on the list. The hushed room felt my Scorpio intensity. I stood outside a glittering gala, an event celebrating a project I had painstakingly built, while my former colleagues toasted inside. Even the junior colleague who had brazenly claimed credit for my work was applauded, while I stood shivering in the biting cold. I didn't argue, I didn't pound on the door. I simply retrieved my phone and pressed send. You could feel the shift in the audience. Some leaned forward, others offered subtle nods, the quiet recognition of being excluded, of being systematically overlooked. I didn't dedicate the speech to a sailing Titan flow. That wasn't the objective. I didn't need to explicitly name them. They had already named themselves in scathing headlines, in tense shareholder calls, in whispered industry updates. Instead, I simply articulated the truth. How ZenithLink had originated with 3 individuals in a rented co-working space and had burgeoned into a team of 42. How we had launched with 0 external funding and now operated in 3 different countries, serving 12 major clients, 7 of whom had once been associated with Titanflow. How we had cultivated a company where individuals stayed late not out of fear, but because they were deeply invested. Where performance reviews didn't reward the loudest voice, but the most significant contributions. I shared our operational framework, our meticulous hiring process, our core team principles. The things we consciously declined just as much as the things we enthusiastically embraced. And finally, I unveiled the most crucial revelation. We didn't achieve success because we sought revenge. We succeeded because we genuinely believed something superior was attainable. We abandoned the old table, the one built on pretense and exploitation, and constructed our own. A table where everyone has a seat and no one has to beg to be recognized. I concluded to a quiet applause, the kind that builds gradually, not from obligation, but because a profound message had truly resonated. I descended from the stage, my heart overflowing. Not with mere pride, but with a deep, pervasive sense of peace, a true transformation. Following the keynote, a lengthy queue of people desired to speak with me. Founders, analysts, even eager university students who had been invited, but one individual stood a little apart from the line. Brooke. She appeared different, softer somehow. Her expression was cautious, devoid of her former arrogance. When I approached, she extended her hand. "I just wanted to offer my congratulations," she stated. That was a remarkably powerful speech. "Thank you," I replied, "and I genuinely meant it. I've been with a different company since June," she added, still attempting to ascertain who I am when I'm not merely following someone else's predetermined script. That revelation surprised me. "I sincerely hope they are treating you with more respect." "They are," she affirmed, "but I truly needed to hear this today." I offered her a small nod. We all commence our journeys somewhere. What truly matters is where we choose to proceed next. She smiled. "Best of luck with ZenithLink." I surveyed the sprawling conference center, my company's name emblazoned on banners, attendees holding ZenithLink-branded folders. Our booth was thronged with curious visitors. "We don't require luck," I said gently, embodying the self-reliance of a true Scorpio. "We merely require the opportunity to continue doing what we've always been doing, just in the appropriate environment." The following week, ZenithLink successfully closed its Series A funding round. $8 million, led by one of the very same venture capital firms that had once disregarded my resume without a second glance. We inaugurated new offices in Austin, Texas, and Rotterdam, Netherlands. We hired our 50th employee. We achieved a significant profitability milestone ahead of schedule. But none of that was what left the most indelible impression on me. What resonated deeply were the emails, dozens of them, from individuals I didn't know. Analysts, designers, account managers, former interns, people who had been told they were just something, just a junior, just support, just a number. "Your story compelled me to resign from my job. Your keynote inspired me to fundamentally rethink the kind of leader I aspire to be. You reminded me I'm not delusional for desiring respect. And this one, thank you for illustrating that being excluded doesn't diminish our inherent worth. It simply signifies we were never meant to remain in that restrictive space." Sometimes, I reflect on that particular night. The bitter cold, the distant laughter echoing through the windows, the sharp sting in my chest. It no longer causes pain. Now, I contemplate the individuals within that opulent ballroom, and I wonder if they ever truly grasped how close they were to retaining me. If someone had simply uttered, "Hey, Aurora, you undeniably belong here," perhaps none of this monumental change would have transpired. But I am profoundly grateful they did not. because being cast out compelled me to cease pleading for a meager space and, instead, to vigorously create an entire universe of my own. The true triumph wasn't merely acquiring clients or dominating headlines or seizing market share. It was demonstrating what extraordinary feats can be achieved when you stop striving to squeeze into someone else's cramped definition of success and begin building something entirely your own. Not in spite of being excluded, but precisely because of it.